Peter Manuel, an American-Scottish serial killer born in New York in 1927, unleashed a reign of terror across Lanarkshire in southern Scotland between 1956 and 1958. Convicted of murdering 7 people in Kneilands, Marion Watt, Vivienne Watt, Margaret Brown, Sidney Dunn, Isabelle Cooke, and the Smart family, and suspected of 2 more, known as the Beast of Birkenshaw. His brutal killings included rape, bludgeoning, shooting, and strangulation. In this documentary, we dive into the psychological and psychoanalytic depths of Manuel's mind, dissecting the motivations, disorders, and twisted desires that drove his horrific crimes, using science to unravel a monster's psyche. Why focus on Peter Manuel? Because his crimes aren't just murders. They're a chilling psychological puzzle, a window into a mind so warped it defies comprehension. His methods, stalking, raping, bludgeoning, shooting, and strangling, were as varied as they were vicious, making him a case study in psychopathy and sadistic rage. Picture this. January 1956, a dark golf course in East Kilbride, where 17-year-old Anne Kneilands is raped and battered to death with an iron bar, her skull shattered. 9 months later, Manuel breaks into a Burnside home, shooting Marion Watt, 45, her daughter Vivienne, 16, and sister Margaret Brown, 41, in their beds. Vivienne sexually assaulted post-mortem. In December 1957, he shoots taxi driver Sidney Dunn, 36, in Newcastle, slashing his throat for good measure. That same month, 17-year-old Isabelle Cooke is raped, strangled, and buried in a field. On New Year's Day 1958, he executes the Smart family, Peter, 45, Doris, 42, and their 10-year-old son Michael, shooting them in their sleep, then living in their home for a week, eating their leftovers and feeding their cat. These acts, so brazen and cruel, demand we uncover what fuels such evil. Let's start at the root, because nobody wakes up a killer. Peter Manuel was born in 1927 in New York to Scottish parents, Samuel and Bridget, who moved to Detroit before returning to Scotland in 1932, settling in Motherwell, then Birkenshaw, Lanarkshire. By age 10, he was already a petty thief, known to local police. Bullied for his small stature and American accent, he grew up in a loving but strict Catholic household, yet something was off. Attachment theory tells us kids need secure bonds to develop empathy. Manuel's early years, marked by bullying, displacement across continents, and a father's illness during the Depression, likely left him feeling isolated, fostering resentment. By 12 in Coventry, England, he was racking up charges for theft and indecent assault, escaping Borstal 10 times. At 16, he committed a string of sexual assaults, landing 9 years in Peterhead Prison. This wasn't just a troubled kid. This was a psyche unraveling, wired for chaos. Psychoanalytically, his childhood screams of a fractured ego. Freud's concept of the ID, the raw, primal urges, seems to have dominated Manuel. Without a strong superego, the moral compass shaped by nurturing parents, his impulses ran unchecked. His constant escapes from Borstal suggested defiance of authority, a need to prove he was untouchable. By the time his family settled in Birkenshaw in 1946, Manuel was a ticking bomb, his juvenile delinquency hardening into something far darker. What kind of mind rapes a teenager, shoots a family, and lives among their corpses? Manuel was diagnosed as an aggressive psychopath during his time in Peterhead Prison, a label that fits like a glove. Psychopathy, or antisocial personality disorder, means a lack of empathy, no remorse, and a thrill in manipulating others. Manuel didn't just kill, he toyed with his victims, the police, even the public. He sent Christmas cards to Detective William Munsey, who pursued him for years, and offered cop a ride while driving a victim's stolen car. That's not just arrogance. It's a need to be the center of attention, a hallmark of narcissistic personality traits. Psychoanalytically, Manuel's behavior suggests a sadistic streak, where inflicting pain was as much about power as pleasure. His fugue states and alleged memory loss, noted by doctors, could point to dissociative episodes, where he detached from reality during his crimes, but his calculated cover-ups, like burying Isabelle Cooke or disposing of Guns and Clyde, show a mind in control. His obsession with American gangsters, noted in sources, suggests he saw himself as a larger-than-life villain, a fantasy fueled by his need to escape his own inadequacy. Combine psychopathy with narcissistic rage, where any slight, like a woman's rejection, trigger explosive violence. And you got a recipe for a serial killer. Let's walk through the horror. January 2nd, 1956, East Kilbride. Anne Kneilands, 17, heads home after a date falls through. Manuel, working nearby for the gas board, stalks her across a golf course. He drags her into a copse, rapes her, and smashes her skull with an iron bar, leaving her body broken in the frost. Her head was a mess, a police report noted, her face unrecognizable from the blows. Manuel shows up to work 2 days later with scratches on his face, but his father's alibi keeps him free. September 17, 1956, Burnside. Marion Watt, 45, her daughter Vivienne, 16, and sister Margaret Brown, 41, are asleep in their bungalow. Manuel, out on bail for burglary, breaks in with a Beretta pistol. He shoots each in the head at point-blank range. Vivienne also sexually assaulted after death. The scene is chilling. Blood-soaked beds, a family frozen in sleep. A neighbor later told the Daily Record. It was like the house was cursed. Marion's husband, William Watt, is arrested, suspected of driving 90 miles overnight to kill them. He spends 67 days in Barley before Manuel's later crimes clear him. December 1957, Newcastle. Taxi driver Sidney Dunn, 36, picks up Manuel, who's job hunting. On a lonely moor, Manuel shoots him in the head, then slits his throat, leaving the body to rot. A button from Manuel's jacket, found in Dunn's cab, ties him to the crime. That same month, Isabelle Cooke, 17, heads to a dance in Mount Vernon. Manuel stalks her, rapes her, strangles her, and buries her in a field, her shoes and handbag tossed in the River Calder. I knew exactly where to look, he later bragged to police, leading them to her shallow grave. New Year's Day, 1958, Uddingston. The Smart family, Peter, 45, Doris, 42, and 10-year-old Michael, are shot in their beds with Beretta. Manuel stays in their home for nearly a week, eating their Hogmanay leftovers, feeding their cat, and driving their stolen car. He acted like it was his house, a detective told the Glasgow Times, noting how curtains moved and lights flicked on, fooling neighbors into thinking the family was alive. He even gave a cop a lift in the car while they searched for Isabelle Cooke. The audacity is stomach-churning. Manuel's victims weren't random. They were opportunities to feed his twisted needs. Young women like Anne Kneilands and Isabelle Cooke, both 17, were vulnerable, alone in the dark, easy prey for a predator who thrived on sexual violence. The Watt and Smart families, asleep in their homes, represented stability, something Manuel, with his chaotic life, envied and despised. Psychoanalytically, object relations theory suggests he projected his rage onto them, seeing them as symbols of the normalcy he could never have. Killing entire families was his way of destroying that ideal, asserting dominance over a world that had rejected him. Sidney Dunn, a random taxi driver, likely crossed Manuel at the wrong time, perhaps rejecting or challenging him, triggering his narcissistic rage. Psychologically, Manuel's choice of victims shows a pattern of targeting the defenseless, women alone, families asleep, to maximize control. His sexual assaults on and Isabelle and Vivienne point to sadistic need to dominate, where rape wasn't just about sex, but about humiliating and destroying his victim's dignity. His fascination with gangsters suggests he saw himself as a predator in a lawless world, picking those who wouldn't be missed or whose deaths would shock the most. Manuel's methods were a chilling mix of brutality and calculation. Bludgeoning Anne Kneilands with an iron bar was raw, primal, a release of pent-up rage. Shooting the Watt and Smart families with a Beretta was clinical, detached, like an executioner at work. Strangling Isabelle Cooke was intimate, hands-on, letting him feel her life slip away. Slitting Sidney Dunn's throat after shooting him shows overkill, a need to ensure death and desecrate the body. Psychologically, this variety suggests a thrill seeker, someone who craved different flavors of violence to satisfy his sadistic urges. His post-murder behavior, living in the Smart home, eating their food, feeding their cat, points to a chilling lack of remorse, a psychopath ability to compartmentalize. Psychoanalytically, this could reflect a fantasy of belonging, of taking over the lives he destroyed. His disposal methods, like burying Isabelle or tossing guns in Clyde, show a cunning awareness of evidence, a mind that planned even in the heat of violence. The scratches on his face after Anne's murder, the stolen banknotes from the Smarts, sloppy mistakes reveal his arrogance, believing he was smarter than the police. For 2 years, Manuel was a ghost, slipping through police fingers. Lanarkshire and Glasgow lived in fear, women escorted home, families locking doors. It was like a shadow over us, a woman told the Glasgow Police Museum, recalling how fathers met buses to protect daughters. Manuel's arrogance was his undoing. After the Smart murders, he spent their banknotes in Glasgow pubs, their serial numbers traced back to Peter Smart's holiday savings. On January 14, 1958, police raided his family's Birkenshaw home, arresting him and his father for housebreaking. Left alone in a cell, Manuel cracked, confessing to 8 murders, leading police to Isabelle's body and his guns in the Clyde. He wanted to be the star, Detective Munsey told the Herald, noting Manuel's need for attention. His confessions were detailed, chilling. He described Anne's murder, the Watt shootings, Isabelle's strangulation, and the Smart family's execution with no emotion, as if recounting a grocery list. But he later retracted them, claiming coercion, a classic psychopathic move to dodge accountability. The evidence, banknotes, a button from Dunn's cab, his own boasts, was overwhelming. The press swarmed Uddingston Police Station, one detective announcing, "A man has been charged with the crimes of Uddingston," as crowds shouted, "You devil," at Manuel. What pushed Manuel to this abyss? His psychopathy, diagnosed in prison. Many felt nothing for his victims, no guilt, no empathy, just a cold drive to dominate. His sadistic tendencies, seen in the prolonged terror he inflicted on Mary McLaughlin in 1955, show a man who got off on fear. Psychoanalytically, his crimes were a projection of his own worthlessness, a boy bullied and rejected, now proving his power through violence. His fascination with gangsters suggests a delusional self-image, a fantasy of being untouchable, larger than life. His contradictory behavior, doting on his mother yet raping and killing women, points to a split psyche. He could mimic charm, as seen when he met photographer Harry Benson in Barley, shaking hands calmly while awaiting trial. But his rage, his need to control, always won out. Trauma from childhood bullying in Borstal likely fueled his anger, while his time in Peterhead Prison, where he studied law and honed his manipulation, made him more dangerous. His release in 1953 was a turning point. He didn't reform. He escalated, as if prison had sharpened his darkness. The trial, May 12, 29, 1958, at Glasgow High Court, was a spectacle dubbed the trial of the century. Manuel, ever the showman, fired his lawyers and defended himself, a first in Scottish history. He was calm, calculating. Lawyer Joe Beltrami later said, noting Manuel's detailed knowledge of the crime seemed too incriminating. He accused William of killing his own family, a bold lie that stunned the courtroom. The jury, unmoved, took just 2.5 hours to convict him of 7 murders, and Kneilands' charge was dropped for lack of evidence. On July 11, 1958, Manuel was hanged at Barley Prison, his final meal fish, chips, tomatoes, tea, and brandy. Even in the condemned cell, he feigned insanity, but his mother saw through it, slapping him and shouting, "You can't fool me." The public exhaled. Families slept easier. A Lanarkshire resident told the Glasgow Times, the terror lifting. But the light sentence, death for 7, no trial for Dunn, left some, like in Kneilands' family, feeling cheated. Manuel's execution, one of Scotland's last, marked the end of a nightmare, but not of the questions he left behind. Peter Manuel's end, hanged at 31, spine snapped on the gallows, forces us to wrestle with heavy questions. Existentialism says he chose his path. Each murder a deliberate act of will, a middle finger to a world that shunned him. But determinism asks, was he ever free? A childhood of bullying, a psyche warped by rejection, a system that let him slip through after rapes and assaults. Did these mold him into the beast of Birkenshaw? His psychopathy made him a predator, but society's failure to stop him sooner made him a plague. Philosophically, his crimes challenge us to define evil. Was it in him from birth, or did the world carve it into him? His need for attention, his taunting of police, suggests a man desperate to exist, to matter, even if through horror. His execution, while just didn't erase the scars. The families of Anne Isabelle, the Watts, the Smarts, and Dunn carry wounds that never heal. Manuel's story is a mirror, forcing us to ask, how we stop the next one? Are we complicit when we fail to see the signs, petty crimes, sexual violence? A kid crying for help before he becomes a monster? Peter Manuel's shadow looms large. Lanarkshire and Glasgow still whisper his name, a bogeyman who turned quiet streets into hunting grounds. His crimes, detailed in ITVs in plain sight and Denise Mina's A Long Drop, expose a new kind of evil, the serial killer, a term barely known in 1950 Scotland. Psychologically, he's a textbook psychopath. His life a warning of what happens when trauma, rage, and a lack of empathy collide. His victims, men, women, a child, show he spared no one, his violence a universal threat. As we close, one truth haunts. Manuel was caught by his own arrogance, but how many others lurk, unseen, waiting for their moment?